Hi there, everyone. Hope you're having a great day out there. We appreciate you joining us and taking some time out of your very busy schedules. We welcome you to the FreightTech Landscape Series hosted by Redwood Logistics. My name is Adam Moreau. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales Operations for Redwood, and I'm joined today by Mike Johnson, our EVP of Strategy. We are very excited to talk to you about going digital, the rise of the digital freight brokerage. Mike and I work closely not only with our brokerage and business operations, but as with any leadership team these days, we're certainly also working hand in hand with our technology teams as we build out what have become some very digitally focused roadmaps. So now it is certainly safe to say this is no longer brand new technology or even terminology, but it is also safe to say it is still very rapidly evolving. So we are no longer talking about the creation of DFB, but rather the rise of it and evolution of its impact on the direction of our industry. It's evolving in ways brokerages are using the technology, the ways in which it is transforming companies that are investing into it. And we see firsthand how it is evolving some of the partnerships you all have with your 3PLs, what they can offer you in terms of speed, price competitiveness, and really, most importantly, how this may be reshaping your expectations for partners and who you might be choosing to do business with now and certainly in the future. So today, we have what I'm sure looks like a short agenda, but we certainly plan on packing a lot in during the 30 minutes you guys have given us today. And we will start with current definition, in our opinions, of what digital freight brokerage means today for 3PLs and for shippers like yourselves. We'll discuss what goes into building DFB and the many aspects that contribute to the digital ecosystem, the ever-growing competitive landscape of DFB that we all find ourselves in, and finally, the inner workings and value that DFB can ultimately provide all of our partnerships. So with that said, let's get right into it. So what is digital freight brokerage? It has seemed to take on such impressive shape and influence since the concept first started making its way into what we will call more mainstream brokerage now within the top tier 3PLs, and not just limited to a few pure technology players out there. So quite simply put, it is matching shippers to more automated capacity, pricing, and load tendering solutions. And in doing so, it's designed to create scalable and improved market buying capabilities, which ultimately is intended to give digital 3PLs the ability to provide our shipping partners, yourselves, with a more successful and progressive partnership. And as I mentioned in our opening, this has been and will continue to be an evolving technologies with many moving pieces, but what we consider to be the key components of automation are quoting, carrier selection and tendering, tracking, and then FP&A. Now, some of those items are generally thought of as more appealing, we'll say, than others, but they are all important and can all benefit by the power of automation and optimization. So a lot of companies can automate, but are they optimizing at all, right? And as Mike gets into more of the detail in a little bit, I think those are the words you'll hear a lot from him, automation and optimization, and the benefits of those two concepts working together so that the very best pricing and carrier selection algorithms and logic create the most beneficial versions of automation. Okay, so moving on to market size and projected growth, frankly, it's both very exciting but also very eye-opening to take a look at some of what the projected numbers around DFB technology look like. This is not automated trucks. You know, this is happening now and will be growing at an incredible clip in the near term, which is why we believe so many of you are interested in learning more and why we and many other larger 3PLs are investing so heavily into digital technology right now and the people that DFB supports. Incredible stat on there on the right that over the next 8 years, DFB gross revenue is expected to top $89 billion, or more importantly, roughly 50% of the industry total. Now, clearly 8 years is a long time, but it isn't that long. So to see compounded annual growth of 34% during those years is something we should all be very thoughtfully prepared for. Before I turn it over to Mike to really start talking about the details of DFB, I know there is a lot of data in that chart, but I'd like to draw your attention to a couple rows. First being the mix of traditional brokerage, basically declining each year by about 5%, which of course means the DFV grows by 5% a year. And right now we're sitting at around 90% traditional, 10% DFV. 10% is a lot when thinking about the size of our industry, but it's not on everyone's radar yet. In a few short years, that goes to 20% to 30% automation. And then you're really talking about an environment where it's impacting a lot of businesses. And lastly, as a direct impact to this audience, please take a look at that top line in gray, assumed traditional brokerage take rate, and notice it going down over time as automation rises. So DFV is designed, at the same time it increases productivity, but it also is designed to streamline businesses and create lower necessary operating margins, which should be a direct benefit to this shipping community. Of course, all markets being equal, of course. So with that, let's turn it over to Mike, really start getting into how this type of ecosystem is built, and more importantly, how it operates.
Great, thanks, Adam. So the next section will be about building a DFV ecosystem, and specifically what's involved for brokerages in creating these automation tools and this technology. First, one of the most important components of building a digital freight brokerage ecosystem is understanding market and lane-specific pricing. Digital freight brokers today are subscribing to large sources of market data in order to get lane-specific pricing insights. In addition, the most critical data that will influence pricing from a digital freight brokerage is really their own internal pricing data on freight lanes. And it's really one of the biggest reasons that you see some of the new digital freight brokerages racing to acquire market share and scale, even at the expense of profitability, because of how important that internal pricing data is. These new companies are building their own internal data, and they're looking to weaponize the network effect that it can unlock in the future. And in reality, a best practice for any digital freight brokerage is to utilize market and internal pricing data, but then couple capacity indicators and market signals in order to better forecast with accuracy what lane-specific prices will be in the future. Doing this will allow digital freight brokerages to digitize the rate experience to both carriers and shippers that they work with. The next component required to build a successful digital freight brokerage is a carrier marketplace. There's over 1 million trucking companies operating in the United States, and it's critical for digital freight brokerages to aggregate as much of this capacity as possible. Sources for aggregating carrier capacity are plentiful, but the three most important sources are lane history data, posted internal carrier networks that digital freight brokerages are building and managing, and then lastly, capacity from public marketplaces such as DAT, Truckstop, Trucker Tools, and Parade. For any digital freight brokerage, the most valuable capacity that they can provide to shippers is from their own internal carrier networks and lane history. Going back to that concept of scale and the importance of it, digital freight brokerages that are capable of managing tens of thousands of carrier relationships, that understand the capacity needs of those carriers, and that can provide consistent utilization of that equipment, that best serves both their shipping partners, but also, maybe more importantly, their carrier partners. As digital freight brokerages are focused on building the liquidity of their own private carrier networks, they're building a competitive advantage that will allow them to compete and scale in the future. As a last resort, digital freight brokerages are utilizing more commoditized sources of capacity, such as public load boards, in order to move some of the more variable freight that they're managing. So how do we bring all of this together now? Well, digital freight brokerages are pulling together the pricing data, the capacity insights, and then they're leveraging that to unlock the benefits of the network effect that they've created. Digital freight brokerages like Redwood Logistics then use proprietary recommendation and pricing engines to automate the carrier selection and the load tendering process. By digitizing functions such as carrier matching, ranking, and pricing, digital brokers will establish a competitive advantage, and it legitimizes why they're investing billions of dollars each year into technology, data science, and scale. Technologies such as machine learning and AI are further being leveraged to simulate expected outcomes so that digital freight brokerages can deliver better results for both carriers and customers. Relevance models are helping digital brokers understand not just which carriers are the best match, but also which carriers are the best fit for freight lanes. And now I'll turn it over to Adam to talk a little bit about what the competitive landscape looks like in the industry.
Yeah, I'll give Mike a quick breather here, but I wanted to highlight that much like the technology itself, the landscape has been evolving rapidly as well, right? So what we've seen is this developing convergence between what have been traditionally procurement-focused companies and traditionally technology-focused companies, right? So as the visual suggests, somewhere there in the middle, there exists that middle ground that a few players on both sides are migrating towards. The technology companies that have realized there is probably more to a successful partnership than a technology platform, and they are investing heavily in people to support it, so they can create a more traditional 3PL experience for their clients while still operating on cutting-edge technology, right? On the other side, obviously the slightly more crowded side, is at least a subset of these world-class logistics companies that have built their success on enabling their people with technology, but not nearly at the same level yet, we'll say at least. But they've really focused on service and a personal touch. And I say that with the assumption that at least some level of pricing competitiveness is basic table stakes no matter what side you're on, right? But each side is recognizing the importance of the other, not just to survive, but really thrive in those next 8 years that I mentioned before, as we make it to a 50%, digitally weighted industry and environment. So you're going to see your top tier 3PL partners double, triple their IT budgets to really create more digital capabilities to enhance their already, very experienced operations. And top tech companies, rather, invest more into the experienced people to help drive better execution of their tech platforms. And drawing it back to this audience, and we are sure you have partnerships with all sides of the spectrum, it's really about being educated enough about the digitization of the industry to challenge your partners the right way based on who they are today, and to learn about which direction they're going to be going in the future to keep up with this ever-changing landscape.
Thanks, Adam. So now I'll jump into what are some of the inner workings and value that's created from digital freight brokerages. First, carrier relationships are really one of the most critical drivers of success when building a digital freight brokerage. One of the main reasons that incumbent 3PLs have been so successful at not just protecting, but also growing market share has been because of the long-term relationships they've built within their carrier networks. These long-term partnerships pay the biggest dividends to all parties in the supply chain because of the trust and reliability that they're built upon. Achieving rate and capacity durability during times of uncertainty, like through 2020, is critical for DFBs to survive and thrive throughout volatile market swings. The best long-term partnerships focus equal weight on price and service, and with great service and freight acceptance, carriers should always be rewarded with great rates. Next, establishing consistent freight opportunities and developing the synergies within your carrier network and high volume freight lanes offers the biggest rewards for FreightTech automation. By leveraging technology to automate the tender, the track, and the settlement for these relationships, organizations can realize large gains in operational yield. In addition, and as we've discussed, brokers and shippers with scale can leverage their network effect of the operation to maximize what their truck utilization rates look like. They can eliminate waste for their carrier partners, and they can eliminate empty miles for their carrier partners as well. Instant freight visibility and tender lead time is directly correlated with higher acceptance performance from carriers. Designing systems and designing processes that focus on providing available freight opportunities to your carrier base as soon as they're available will significantly impact carrier compliance and cost avoidance in the spot market. Shippers, brokers, and carriers all benefit from sharing visibility to freight that needs to move as soon as it becomes available. Shippers should look inward at maximizing tender lead time for transportation providers, and digital brokerages like Redwood benefit by providing instant visibility of their freight to relevant carrier partners as soon as it's ready to assign. These carrier partnerships are strengthened by giving them plenty of time to maximize the utilization and the planning of their equipment. And finally, when building a digital freight brokerage, it's important to be ecosystem agnostic. As we discussed, there's over 1 million trucking companies in the U.S., and they all operate differently. Our position is that there won't be one mobile app, carrier load board, carrier portal, or other medium that can reach all of these carriers effectively. We believe in order to maximize access to capacity, it's important that your digital strategy can reach carriers in the environment that they operate and where they find freight. We focus our carrier engagement first within our own private marketplace of capacity that we're managing and building in our TMS load runner, but then we also extend available freight opportunities and visibility to additional channel partners. Platform connectivity will advance these relationships in the future so that TMS systems, ERP connectivity, and connectivity in general between shippers, brokers, and carriers will allow for further gains from automation. So we're doubling down on platform integrations to elevate service agility and really our ability to deliver digital freight brokerage solutions across all of our business units at Redwood. Fortunately, Redwood's uniquely positioned in the industry to leverage our award-winning no-code integration platform, Redwood Connect, to power a more connected digital freight brokerage ecosystem. And finally, connecting to supply chain partners that can digitize tracking and carrier visibility has become somewhat table stakes. If I look back, tracking providers such as MacroPoint were really some of the first movers or pioneers to advance digitization in the supply chain space all the way back in 2009. Since then, there have been a proliferation of new connected supply chain partners that provide tracking and visibility solutions, among other technology solutions. Aggregating all of these tracking solutions across multiple platforms and normalizing location data is a huge benefit to shippers. And in addition, digital freight brokerages that can leverage real-time tracking solutions and capacity insights within their operation can streamline these operational touch points across the life of a load. The goal for all digital freight brokerages should be to offer real-time visibility to all of their shipping partners through tracking connectivity. In addition, digital freight brokerages should employ exception-based management processes within their operation to fully leverage the tracking solution. So with that, we'd like to open it up for questions. We tried to distill down as much of the content as we could into a succinct presentation on what's happening in the supply chain space, how are digital freight brokerages evolving and approaching the market opportunities, and what does the digital freight brokerage model look like over the next few years.
Yeah, okay. So again, first of all, just thanks for joining us. This is a topic I'm sure you can tell we are very passionate about, just because of how significant it really is for all of us, right? How it will continue to impact our businesses, our partnerships, our careers as well, right? So we encourage all of you to visit our website, redwoodlogistics.com/insights for more info.